And so there was a brief period of about 3 months where I qualified for the Marine Cadet Corps. And later on, they changed it to require 4 units of English, which will rule me out. But anyway, I got in just under the wire there.
Mm-hmm.
So only with 3 years of high school, I did get in, and I did very well there. In fact, I ended up valedictorian in my section.
That's what I was going to say. I remembered recalling. So it kind of surprised me when you said, early on and, in school you're having trouble reading because, you articulate in your writing and in your speaking so well, and in your telling of your stories is just remarkable. You're very detailed in them, and it kind of takes everyone on a journey. So it's that's an interesting thing to hear about, and I've heard that before, how children will have difficulty in reading, and it ends up being vision a lot of times. So it's good that your parents went to the, lengths that they did to figure out, what that was, and then you moved on from there, because you certainly have excelled. Not just,
what about this quack in Kansas City saying that I had air pockets in my head and there was no hope for me?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate.
I wonder how much they had to pay.
Yes, it's unfortunate that there are people who don't really take the time to find out what is going on, and that does crop up more often than people would probably want to believe. But you move past it, and then I'm very interested in you sharing some of the things that you went through in your cadet training. But we must take a commercial break, and then when we come back from that, we're going to pick up the story on some of the things that you had to do while you were in cadet training. Okay? We'll take a commercial break and be right back.
Jennifer Coolidge. The American Heart Association says the disco song Stayin' Alive is the near-perfect beat for hands-only CPR. If you see a teen or adult collapse from cardiac arrest, you only need 2 steps to help save a life. Call 911 and push hard and fast in the center of the chest to the beat of the song Stayin' Alive. Disco is back and it's saving lives. To learn more, go to heart.org/hands-only-CPR.
Nationally supported by the WellPoint Foundation.
Welcome back to International Radio Tours. You are listening to our feature presentation, Some Nautical Tales. This is Lady Sailor Juris, and I am hosting for this special program with our guest, Captain Wilbur H. Vantine. So let's pick up the story, Captain Vantine. And so now you did get into the Merchant Marines, just under the wire, as you said. I wanted you to share with our listeners, what was the cadet training like? What did you have to go through?
Well, it was a very accelerated and difficult program, physically and mentally. You had 3 months of basic training. And they worked us as hard as they could, and about 1/3 of the cadets would be failed during that 3-month period, from either getting more than 50 demerits or below 2.7 on any course, and they trimmed it down you lost a good many people that way. And then you went to sea for 6 months, and you had a sea project that you had to do, and that required about at least 3 hours a day to do the sea project. That they had a written program that you'd follow, and of course you also worked for the ship. And during that 6 months, you were supposed to complete your sea project. Well, a lot of people weren't able to complete the sea project. On my first ship, by the way, the ship gave me no ship's time to work on my sea project. They worked me 12 hours a day doing manual labor, and I had to do what I could towards getting the sea project done. But anyway, that first voyage only lasted 5 months, so I got to go on another ship and was able to finish my sea project on the second ship. But then after your minimum was 6 months sea time, well, then you went back to the academy for 9 months, and there they flunked out another 1/3 of the cadets. Same thing, getting too many demerits or getting 2.7 in any course, and there again about 1/4 or 1/3 would get failed out. My own section started with 32, and we ended up with 16, and that was about average. 16 graduated.
And there were about 10,000 recruits going through the program, right? At that time?
No, that was the 10,000 figure you're probably getting when I was at Sheepshead Bay for the training. Yes. At Kings Point, I think we had maybe 2,000 there at the academy at the time, plus the ones that were out on ships.
Okay. So there were other challenges that you had during the fact that you're leaving home, you're leaving everything that you know, and you haven't really had any experience in the world. Did that come up when you're thrown amidst all these strangers, places you didn't know, in terms of how to navigate through all of these experiences? Did that have a play?
Well, of course, I was 18 years old, but there were millions of 18-year-olds going through the same process, so nobody thought much about it. When I first went to Sheepshead Bay, I had the usual things, things that you don't think about but occur. First of all, I had my first New York Liberty, for instance. I hadn't, at 18 years old, I didn't have any experience drinking, but here it was available, So my first Liberty out, I drank too much and got intoxicated, and that was educational. Don't do that again. and a few things like that. But we all survived it, and there were millions of young men all over the country going through similar experiences. So that was routine for that generation.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that took place after you got through the training. Tell us about your. I wanted to hear about. You had a sea assignment that you had to do during the training. So before we get to Voyage 1, tell us a little bit about your assignment at sea as a cadet.
Well, on that first ship, the Davy Crockett, we sailed through the Panama Canal, and then we zigzagged at sea. So if a submarine sighted us, they would try to anticipate where they could torpedo us ahead of time, but we were constantly changing course, zigzagging, they called it, confused submarines, and in the Japanese submarines, if they torpedoed you, well, they machined anybody that happened to get in the lifeboat. the German sub-captains were, they recognized us as fellow seamen, and they would, instead of machine gunning the lifeboat, they would take the captain as captive on the sub. But they didn't be sure you check to see you had enough water, and they would tell you what course to steer to the nearest land. And that was quite different from the Japanese. But they would machine gun everybody that was in the lifeboat. There's no survivors if they torpedoed a ship. But anyway, so anyway, we hoped no Japanese sub would get us, but they didn't. But it was a long voyage from Panama. Our first stop was in New Guinea, Milne Bay, New Guinea, and it was over a month. We had both Thanksgiving and Christmas at sea, and then we finally arrived at the Milne Bay, New Guinea, and it was an amazing sight. There was about 150 ships anchored there. More than half of them, I think, were Liberty ships. And that was at the extreme southeast point of New Guinea was the large bay there that we used as a staging place, and that's the farthest south that the Japanese got. The Australians and Americans stopped them there, and they did bomb Port Moresby over in North Australia, but it was relatively minor. And the Japanese, by the time they got there, they were overextended with their supply lines and all, and we were able to stop them. But there was a bunch of Japanese killed at Milne Bay. In fact, the purser on our ship, the purser farm's mate, was a young fellow about my age, 18, 19, and he was a recent graduate of the purser farm's school at Cheapside Bay. And he went ashore to where the Japanese soldiers were buried and dug into one and removed his head and cleaned it up. And he had a souvenir on the ship of a Japanese soldier's head. And
wow.
We were all surprised it was so small. It looked like a child's head. But it was a Japanese soldier that had been killed at Milne Bay. Don't tell anybody at the Geneva Convention about this. I believe it was against the rules.
Yes, that sounds like something that would have been definitely against the rules. Even though people say there are no rules in war, there actually is.
But we had extreme hatred for the Japanese. We regarded them as despicable in every way. The best thing to do was kill all of them. And now they're our buddies, but in those days they were not.
Yes, and that attitude was, very prevalent during that time period, which was not only affecting, the people who were fighting the war, but on land as well in the countries. Which also even carried over to the people who were in this country who were not even, a part of the war. Still that attitude
Japanese
permeated.
Americans were treated terrible, and they were fine people, but we didn't know it at the time.
Yes, and war does provoke all of those types of things where, as here we are later, enjoying, their cultural way of life in our country and the things that they bring and teach and show us, and vice versa. And there's a lot of trade and commerce now, between the two countries. So, but at that time, I have heard with other seamen and military people that they felt that attitude was critical to their survival. They had to look at them as, or any war that a person is in, they had to look at the other person as the enemy, because to think any other way, they didn't feel like they
Right. Well, it was kind of like the jungle. He would kill you, if he had the chance. So you had to try